have a house full of dignitaries, and so we need everybody sitting down. I know everybody wants a fabulous picture, but we need everybody sitting down. All righty. This is my last 8th grade teacher act of the year. Some of y'all saw the casino, so you know what I'm talking about. All right. Thank you all for coming. I am now going to turn this event over to the real people in charge. Richard, I believe you're first.
No, I'm not actually CEO.
Here we go.
To the centennial birthday celebration of the 51st Mayor of Chicago, the late Harold Washington. Presented by Mayor Lori Lightfoot, First Lady Amy Eshelman, and the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee. For those who are able, please stand and remain standing through the national anthem.
Order, arms. Forward, march.
twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Here's Harold is made possible by Mayor Lori Lightfoot, First Lady Amy Eshelman, and the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee, along with co-chairs Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Tony Preckwinkle, President of the Cook County Board of Commissioners, and the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson, founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition. And a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Northern Trust Company Bank, and co-sponsors 2-in-1 Construction, DL3 Realty, Balton Corporation. Today we celebrate the accomplishments and remarkable achievements of Harold Washington, the Chicago mayor who survived the toughest, dirtiest election in American history and won an election that captured worldwide attention, and people everywhere responded. Please welcome our host for the evening, Chicago's own Richard Steele.
Man, the night that Harold won, that was a hell of a night, wasn't it? So welcome, Chicago. Glad to have you here this evening, and welcome to Here's Harold. An evening, yeah, that's right. Who said yeah, right? An evening to celebrate the life, spirit, and remarkable achievements of the one and the only Mayor Harold Washington, the first African-American mayor of Chicago. Well, tonight's celebration, Here's Harold, is made possible by Mayor Lori Lightfoot, First Lady Amy Eshelman, and the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee, along with Chicago's co-chairs, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, Tony Preckwinkle, President of the Cook County Board of Commissioners, and the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson, founder and president of the Rainbow Push Coalition. And very special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Northern Trust Company Bank, and co-sponsors 2-in-1 Construction and DL3 Realty, and also Balton Corporation. Over 3 decades ago, few believed that we would ever have a black mayor in Chicago. But in 1982, the late activist and journalist Lou Palmer said, "We shall see in '83. Reverend Jesse Jackson announced on his radio show that the then current mayor, you know who that was, right, had rescinded her promises to the black community and told Reverend Jackson, "Reverend, I don't owe you anything." Really? That led to a caller suggesting a boycott of the Byrne signature event, Chicago Fest. That was a big one. The black community said yes, and that the time had come to elect a black mayor, and over 200,000 new voters registered. That was amazing. That was amazing. We're here today because Chicagoans of all ethnic groups gave their money, talent, time, energy, and expertise. Check this out. People sold candy, had bid-whist parties, sold catfish dinners on Friday, to raise money for the Washington campaign. And then they made their way to the polls on April 12, 1983, and punched 9 for Harold. This moment, as I look around the room, it looks like a Harold Washington reunion. People I haven't seen for many years. A lot of you haven't seen each other for many years. It's a great night tonight. What Harold represented was everything at the table, and that's kind of what we're at right now. A lot of familiar faces. In his inaugural address, Harold said, and these are his words, "Tonight, we're here to celebrate a resounding victory. We have fought a good fight. We have finished our course, and we have kept the faith. We fought it with unseasoned weapons and with the phalanx of people who mostly have never been involved in a political campaign before. Maybe this has happened before, but no, I know not where." Harold's words. You know, he had some words. Y'all know that, right? He had a way with words, and he could send the best reporters and the most brilliant minds to the dictionary to look up something. But the remarkable thing about him is that he could speak to anyone and get his point across. And we all feel that way about Harold. Now would you please welcome pastor of New Tabernacle of Faith Baptist Church, Reverend Paul Jakes, for our opening prayer. Following Reverend Jakes, we will hear from the Commissioner of the Harold Washington Library, Mr. Chris Brown. Reverend Jakes, come on with it.
May we bow our heads in a word of prayer. Dear Father God, as we commemorate the life and legacy of the Honorable Mayor Harold Washington on this 100th birthday, we acknowledge that Mayor Washington was the GOAT, the greatest of all times. Lord, you allowed us to have Mayor Washington on this earth for 65 years and lived his life with distinction as he served this country as a sergeant in the U.S. Army during World War II, further as he attended Roosevelt College and Northwestern University Law School, and served in the Illinois General Assembly for 16 years. Also as he served as a member of the U.S. Congress, helping to make Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday a national holiday. Thanks for giving Harold Washington intelligence, favor, know-how, and courage to bail the cat, and the innate ability to intuitively know the economic, political, and cultural ramifications of Chicago's racial divisions. Harold was not afraid to enforce economic fairness for all Chicagoans, especially the African American community. Make us, Lord, people who emulate Harold's compassionate spirit toward all in need. For we remember Mayor Washington saying in 1983 that this political battle is not about race, it's about money and power and morality. We know, Lord, that justice cannot be purchased, for it takes a special champion to care enough to serve others, to bring reform for over 2 decades in public life. It was Harold who awoke the sleeping giant of civic responsibility. it was Harold who inspired the biggest voter registration drive to take the 5th floor. It was Harold who awoke Chicago to come alive October 5. It was Harold who rang the bell for justice and others to run for public office and win. For Lord, you gave us Harold. And Lord, we know that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. Now, Lord, as we, Lord, reflect on Hebrews 12, we know, Lord, that there is now a cloud of witnesses, Lord, that have come and have, Lord, gone up to be with you. Let us, Lord, continue to have Harold, along with others like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and with Frederick Douglass and with Sir John R. Truth and Fannie Lou Haman and others, Lord, that have fought the good fight and have kept the faith. Lord, give us this faith that we will continue to walk together and never be weary. And Lord, we thank you now for this day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good evening. I'm Chris Brown, Library Commissioner for the Chicago Public Library, and we're just thrilled to be gathered with you tonight to celebrate the 100th birthday of Harold. I just want to call our attention to the place that we're in this evening. It's not just that Harold is our namesake, that the library is named after him, which would make so much sense because he was such a champion of inclusivity and fairness, which is what libraries do. But also, I want to call attention to what a champion for a world-class Chicago that Harold was. It's really because of him and his work to place and locate the building that we're in tonight that we could all be here today to celebrate him. And speaking of the people in this room, I want to also thank all those who worked with Harold. We're joined by so many former staff and colleagues and friends who are in the audience or represented by family. We're also joined by a who's who of current and former elected, including our governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, chief judge, several current and former members of Congress, multiple aldermen, the city treasurer, and of course, our own champion for equity and inclusion, Mayor Lightfoot. As Chicago's first black woman and first openly gay mayor, you'll be hearing more from her later this evening, and we just have so much to be grateful for from her. I also want to call your attention, since I mentioned space, we have 2 exhibits in this 9th floor dedicated to the life, the work, the projects, the coalitions that were built with and for Harold. And I just want to encourage all of you to take some time and explore them. As you know, so many of those coalitions are the minorities in our communities, and Harold was a champion of also women in Chicago. And so it's my privilege to get to introduce our next speaker, a women leader in Chicago who worked with Harold on those campaigns directly, who was Harold's aide, and who helped establish the Harold Legacy Committee, Miss Josie Childs.
Well, good evening, everyone. Here, take the microphone. Oh, I don't have it up there, okay. I'm Josie Childs, and I'm president and founder of the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee. I just want to thank all of you for being here. It is so appropriate that we're in this building. This was one of the last designated whatever in Chicago for Mayor Daley. And I tried so hard to get him here, but he brought in a young man, well, this is his home, but he happened to have been in Boston, to oversee the direction of this building. And he brought this building in on time and under budget. The late Mayor Harold Washington left those of us here tonight, the entire city of Chicago, the nation, and indeed the world, a rich legacy of African-American excellence and profound civic and public service achievements. I believe, and I think we all agree, I'm sure he deserves our constant, ongoing acknowledgement, respect, and recognition. Yes. That's why the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee exists. You know, the committee gave me a written speech, you know, they should have known that she made the mistake of giving it to me last night, so I've changed everything she said. So, so if you don't recognize it, I'm sorry. We're indeed blessed and honored to welcome you to this glorious event, the Harold 100th Centennial Birthday Celebration. On this date, April 12, 2022, 39 years ago, April 12, 1883, Harold Washington was elected. Too many of us have, well, he was and always will be, here's Harold. Now, Harold loves Chicago. I didn't see it up there yet. I hope I will see it somewhere where he sang, "Chicago, Chicago, my hometown." He loved Chicago. So I'm just having a good time seeing all the people that we see. We were family. We were family. That was a Washington family, and we still are. You'd be surprised when you just mention the name Harold Washington, the response that you get. Tonight, as I look around and see you, the dedicated and diverse group of current civic leaders, former Washington officials, city councils, and other government affiliates, noted city activists, change agents, supporters, and media, I'm confident that Chicago will never, ever forget the legacy of the down-to-earth, politically savvy, brilliant, and gregarious Mayor Harold Washington, a lawyer, accomplished former Illinois state representative, state senator, U.S. congressman, who became Chicago's first black mayor. And I can truly tell you, he did not want to run for mayor. He did not. The day before he was to announce, he called me and talked for a half an hour. He said, "I like what I'm doing." But he felt he was a better legislator than he was an administrator. And that's why he really wanted to stay where he was. Even today, well, I'm going to say, you got this stuff written down here for me. Well, he's still a much-loved political icon who tragically passed away while working in his office on November 25th. Now, you know, most people just think of Harold as mayor. They forget, before he was mayor, he had a record. He was a state rep, a state senator, a congressman, and then a mayor. And he left an indelible record at each of those places. Many of you don't know, but Harold Washington sponsored and passed the first commemorative holiday for Dr. King's birthday, which made Illinois the first state in the Union to, not the national now, I'm talking about the commemorative birthday. The centennial celebration is a continuation of a variety of positive community-focused initiatives to further the legacy of the late, great Mayor Harold Washington. We invite all of you in this room to continue to create events throughout the year. We declared 2022 as Harold's year. So anyone that wants to do anything with their organizations during their meetings to highlight the tenure of Mayor Washington, we would deeply appreciate it. Speaking of thank you, allow me to start by expressing my deep appreciation to all of the Mayor Harold Washington legacy members and other volunteers for their steadfast, and I want them to stand. I want them to stand. The Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to upholding the memory of this legacy of this great humanitarian, Chicago's first black mayor. Their commitment of time, talent, and treasure made this evening possible. Special thanks to Mayor Lightfoot and to First Lady Amy, I don't mess your name up, I know, but anyway, Ashley for co-hosting tonight's special event. And our honorary chairs and honorary co-chairs, Governor Pritzker, President Tony Pretwinkle, and Reverend Jesse L. Jackson of Rainbow Push. And while I'm saying that, I gotta say, Reverend Jackson is one of the people in this room who was there. And we're in this room tonight because of your effort. Well, there were others, but you were there. You were there. We're strongly grateful to the Chicago Public Library Commissioner, Chris Brown, and his enthusiastic and committed staff who have collaborated with us to bring this historical event to a successful completion. Through the years, CBL has housed the archives of Mayor Washington. And here I have to give a shout out to Dolores Wood, who was Mayor Washington's, yeah? You know, there's a lot of history in this room that people need to know. It was Dolores Wood. I guess Mayor Sawyer became the mayor after Harold. And no, I don't think it was Sawyer. I believe it was Dale. But anyway, he appointed Dolores to oversee yeah, he had been mayor, but it was anyway, Dolores was assigned to put together the archives that are in this building, and I strongly encourage all of you sometime to just take your time and stop by and see what's in that archive. I guess. Now, we've established a $100,000 scholarship fund, and Roosevelt has endowed it. Are you here, Roosevelt? No. But anyway, we'll be looking for contributions to make this scholarship possible. And I want you to know there's already been support for that. Now, what is all this crap they got down here for me to say?
Yeah, right.
Turning our vision into reality. Well, I just said we are proud to announce some and remind others today that Roosevelt University, Harold's alma mater, has endowed the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Endowment Scholarship, which was formally established at Roosevelt University December 10th, and our goal is to raise $100,000 in 2022. Hint, hint, everybody. Another group of individuals deserve our honor and respect. The people who comprise the citywide multiracial coalition who planned, strategized, registered awesome numbers of voters, rallied, walked, raised, and donated funds. And right here, I want to say something. Mr. Johnson, I see you over there, and you were one of the black businessmen who really stepped up to the plate. But there's another part to that story that I want to tell. If there's anyone who knows everything about the election of Harold Washington, it's Lois Wood Walker, who coordinated this event. And she says, we give the black businessmen credit for the money that they raised, and they raised a lot. But when they had the rally at University of Illinois, Reverend Jackson went on the stage and said, lock the doors, don't let nobody in until they put $1 in the barrel for Harold. And that was the beginning of the barrels going all around the city, wherever there was a mass gathering. And the community put their nickels and dimes and quarters in those barrels. And Jim Williams talks about, at that time we had Independence Bank, and Independence Bank had a contract with the city of Chicago, CTA, for counting the change that they got all day in those checks. So you got a barrel full of change, nickels, dimes, and quarters. So they were able to take those barrels to Independence Bank, where you were, Mr. Johnson, and count those nickels, dimes, and quarters. And a lot of the money to elect Harold Washington came from the community. People need to know that.
Let's hear it for Josie Childs.
Well,
next up, I'd like to,
the other thing, we talk about voter registration. One of the things, well, you know, Harold said, register me 50,000 others before I will agree to run. And voter registration is under attack right now. We need to remember that in memory of Harold. We really need to. Well, the chairman over here just come and told me I need to stop talking. I just want to give a little history of the community's support of electing Harold Washington. One of the things we plan to do before it's over, it was Lou Palmer who said, "We shall see" in '83. And he held those rallies at Bethel AME Church. And that's where the community was stimulated and went out and rang doorbells and just worked. And we plan to put a plaque on that church to say, here is really where the community got its stimulus. They would leave those rallies and go out and ring doorbells and everything. But there's a lot of history, and Lois is here pulling my seat, so I won't tell you anymore. But thank you all for coming.
thank you, Josie. Let's hear it for Josie Childs. And I now have the distinct privilege of introducing our next speaker, the governor of our great state of Illinois. Please welcome our Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Well, Josie, while you were talking, Reverend Jackson leaned over to me while you were talking about the Legacy Scholarship. And when you said, so everybody in here ought to give money, and he grabbed my hand and tried to raise my hand. So in honor of him, in honor of you, in honor of Harold Washington, I want to contribute $10,000. Well, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Lieutenant Governor Stratton, Congressman Chuy Garcia, by the way, happy birthday, Congressman Garcia. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, Chief Judge Timothy Evans, Leader Maddie Hunter, my friend who I get to work with in Springfield, CPL Commissioner Chris Brown. Chris, by the way, my wife and I were the very first ones to be married in this room, just so you know. Many years ago. Karen Stone, Reverend Paul Jakes, and so many other elected leaders who are here, community leaders, civic leaders. It's an honor. It's an honor to be here with all of you on this auspicious occasion as we commemorate 100 years of Harold Washington in life and in legacy. The depth of this celebration in the room and some joining us virtually is yet another testament to the staying power of Harold Washington and what he stood for in a city that proudly lifts up his legacy. Credit for that longevity goes first and foremost to the man himself, but of course it also goes to the work of the Harold Washington Legacy Committee. History only speaks for as long as we give it a voice. And I want to commend your success in uplifting the remarkable achievements of a truly legendary leader. Harold Washington was a man whose public service put people first. From building a grassroots movement across the city of Chicago to making the city's workforce look far more like the people that it served, to giving voice to those who've been shut out of government for far too long. This was a man who shook up the model of his office and turned it into a demonstration of true leadership. And even before he became mayor of Chicago, as we all know, he was a man for all of Illinois, representing the land of Lincoln in the State House, of course, in the United States Congress for over 15 years before he reached the 5th floor. Today, more than 30 years after the end of his tenure, this city and this state still reverberate with Harold Washington's soul. That's why it's our responsibility, collectively, to continue his legacy of standing up and fighting for the rights of working people and all who have been forgotten and left out and left behind. The loss of this great man was devastating, but we can take comfort in the fullness with which he lived his years. Steady and unending was his commitment to justice, to democracy, and to equity. This week, as we commemorate him and his public service, I urge all Illinoisans to find some small way to take a step forward in standing up for his belief in community. Progress is made piece by piece, and if we follow the great legacy of this great man, one Chicago is ours for the making. Thank you.
Governor J.B. Pritzker. Hi, check this out. So much has been said about Mayor Washington, like his ability to make everybody he met feel like he was their best friend. He was that kind of guy. It was amazing the way people would hold a conversation about Harold and talk to him, talk about him like they had just had dinner with him at his house. Amazing. Places like Izola's restaurant on 79th Street, where I used to go all the time. Right, Tim? Harold was a people person. People in every neighborhood had a Harold Washington story. Everybody could tell you something about Harold that nobody else knew. It was amazing. I used to have him as a regular guest on a radio show that I used to do at night called Chat with the Chief. So he referred to me, my name is Richard Steele, but because he's so personable, he'd answer a question. He says, well, you know, I think Dick, blah, blah, blah. He would shorten it, you know what I'm saying? Well, the next few individuals did personally know Harold, and they will share their intimate memories. First, no one knows you like family does, so we want to welcome his niece, Ms. Karen Stone, who will be followed by U.S. Congressman Jesus Garcia. Attorney Tom, who's a past board member of the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Rebecca Sive, Harold Washington team member and author and activist, and Peggy Montez, who was appointed as the executive director of the Chicago Commission on Women, and each knew him differently. Let me hasten to add that we have a limited amount of time tonight, so this will be the hook. We know everybody that's going to speak is articulate and can really deliver, so we just ask you to help us with that. So having said that, let's bring up Karen Stone, representing the Harold Washington family. Come on, Karen.
Good evening, everyone. The Washington family offers our heartfelt gratitude to the Harold Washington Legacy Committee for inviting us to take part in this wonderful celebration of our Uncle Harold's life and legacy of service. And a very special thank you to Josie Childs for her strong dedication to ensuring Harold's story is written in history for generations to come. Harold understood hard work as well as service for others, which was demonstrated to him from prior generations at a young age. Prior to his years as mayor of Chicago, Harold served in the Illinois State Senate, where he made a huge impact and authored legislation for correction reform. He was elected to the U.S. Congress, where he served the Education and Labor, Judiciary, and Government Operations Committees. Harold served in several capacities, and in each with the goal to help create better outcomes for the people he served. Many remember Harold and may wonder what made his service as mayor stand out. We believe a major difference was how he united the city of Chicago. Both victories were due to his collective support from African Americans, whites, Hispanics, and Asians, a coalition of many voices with a goal to create real reform. My uncle stood for, believed in, and fought for a unified city, saying Chicago is one city. We shall work as one people for our common good and our common goals. If nothing else is known or remembered about our uncle, please know Harold loved the people of Chicago. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Many in this room tonight already know this. What you may not know is Harold was not only a mayor that helped, he was also an uncle who was there to help his family. I would call my uncle for advice. Normally, after being disappointed from one outcome or another, most likely a result of my own poor choices as a young person. And though he was obviously very busy, he was willing to take the time to listen to my complaints. However, he never left me in the same mindset as how he found me. I always felt uplifted after our conversations. Though my uncle would listen with empathy, he would at some point stop me and ask, "What is your plan?" Though I often believed I had no plan, his question would prompt me to form an answer. Even if I made it up as I went along, the spoken plan would give me hope in the future, which now as I look back and realize that was exactly my uncle's hope for me when he asked the question, that I would form a plan to help create a new hope for my future. Harold's hope for Chicago, as he would say, was, our concern is to heal. Our concern is to bring together, and this was the same hope and concern Harold had for his family. My mother, Geneva, may she rest in peace, was Harold's sister, and she was so very, very proud of him, as we, the family, are today. And if I can remind us all of the word of God, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2 tells us, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets, so whoever reads it may run with it. I will close by reminding us all of the power of creating a plan for service. Now more than ever before, the hard work and community service of the Harold Washington Legacy Committee, as well as the Harold Washington Community College and so many others, embodies Harold's spirit by showing the power of love with service and planning for positive change for generations to come. Thank you.
Buenas noches, good evening, everyone. I am Congressman Chuy Garcia. And I am delighted to be with so many friends in this room to honor the life and legacy of Harold Washington on my birthday. But I want you to know the best birthday gift that I've ever received, Congressman Gutierrez, was on April 12, 1983, when Harold Washington was elected mayor of our city. So tonight, as we gather to celebrate the life and legacy, I just want to remind all of us what Harold stood for and the responsibility that we bear when we leave this gathering. First of all, Harold beat the machine and helped dismantle the worst aspects of racism, corruption, sexism, and exclusion of people from government. And in turn, he replaced those practices, bad practices of Chicago, with empowerment, especially for the neighborhoods and for real, honest people, hardworking people in the neighborhoods. He showed us how you build progressive coalition through good values and investment in people and bringing people together around the common themes and issues that they're facing in their communities. And lastly, he showed us how to build coalition through respect. In my part of town, Harold brought a group of Latino, blacks, and whites and helped us, inspired us to form the 22nd Ward Independent Political Organization founded by Rudy Lozano. And as we gather here tonight, we have to remember heroes like that, because we are here because they lived and they organized and they brought us together and they taught us how we could win. So tonight, as we reflect on the life and legacy, it's really important to understand that Harold was always forward-thinking. After all, he declared Chicago the first sanctuary city in the country and say everyone is welcome in Chicago. And two, he always understood that the future of any positive change in our country or in the world laid in young people. We have to build the bench of young leaders in all aspects of our society. That is the challenge that we must leave with here tonight. And I want you to know that we're doing that. Those people who came together. We've helped elect new leaders to the city council, to the county board, countywide, and in the state legislature, where Harold Washington cut his political teeth and also cut his political values and his social values as well. And I want you to remember this, that good deeds that Harold did in Congress, by making the voting rights better, by making it a living testament of what's important to everyone in our society, that's how we overcame the bad Chicago politics and elected 25 people in 1986 and became a diverse representative Chicago. And like Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, in the Senate, Harold became the tiebreaker in Chicago and ushered in real representative democracy. And that democracy was good for all people. It was good for Black and Latino and Asian and women and many others who benefited. Why? Because of fairness and a commitment to justice. That is what embodied the example of Harold Washington, and that is our task as we leave here tonight, to build, to bring together, and to always challenge ourselves to be embracing of all people. Thank you. Muy buenas noches.
Good evening. Thank you to Mayor Lightfoot and Josie Childs of the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee. My name is Daryl Tom. My dad was Ping Tom, who worked with Mayor Washington. And so I've been invited to talk about Mayor Washington's impact on Chinatown. In 1984, the Santa Fe Railroad announced that they were going to sell a 32-acre abandoned rail yard, and this property happened to be adjacent to Chinatown. My dad, who was the president of the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce at the time, and his friends saw this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to expand Chinatown. So he formed a corporation in order to put a bid on the property, but there were two other parties interested: the U.S. Post Office and the Chicago World's Fair 1992 Authority, who wanted to build a parking lot. Well, they invited Mayor Washington down to Chinatown, and he had some Chinese food and saw the plans and ended up rejecting the other two proposals, paving the way for Chinatown to acquire the property. Mayor Washington also assisted in the financing of that project. He was the first Chicago mayor to actually use tax increment financing for the project, which is now known as Chinatown Square, home to 60 commercial units, as well as residential townhomes and apartments. So for that, we are grateful, and thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Seib. I am deeply honored to be here this evening. I have prepared remarks. I grew up in New York along with my husband, Steve, who I'm grateful he's here this evening. So I'll try to talk in a New York minute. Thank you to Josie Childs for being the standard bearer for Harold Washington. Ever since Harold passed, without Josie, the rest of us would not be here this evening. I want us to give her a hand. Harold Washington was my mentor, beginning in the late 1970s, when he and I met during his service as an Illinois state senator and when he was the Democratic sponsor of the Illinois Human Rights Act. After I was appointed by Governor Thompson to the Illinois Human Rights Commission in 1980, I visited Harold at his office, some of you will remember this, on South Cottage Grove, to ask for his guidance. At that point, Harold was on his way to Congress, so he would be viewing Chicago and Illinois politics from a bit of a distance. "Rebecca, you'll be my person," he said to me, peering out from under those great bushy eyebrows of his. But Harold was really our person. To hundreds of thousands of courageous voters, to millions of Chicagoans who grew to love and respect him, and to us, his campaign workers, who in some cases literally spilled blood to elect him mayor in 1983, that was the revolutionary election. That one was the one that permanently made Chicago better. Among those campaign workers were the Reverend Addie Wyatt, internationally renowned civil rights and labor leader, deeply missed by many of us. I know, Reverend Jackson, you join me in thinking about her. The Reverend Willie Barrow, leader of Operation Push, and Mrs. Nancy Jefferson. We never called her Nancy, as those of you here will recall, West Side civil rights and community activist. I had begun working with all of them in the mid-1970s in the movement to pass the Equal Rights Amendment in Illinois. So in the fall of 1982, the four of us came together under the umbrella of the Women's Network for Washington to work to elect Harold. Here is my show and tell. This is a picture of the four of us with Harold at the Hilton and Towers in December 1982, the first major rally of that campaign. Lest anyone forget it, I won't let you. The rally was the Women's Network for Washington, and thanks to another person who has passed, Sid Ordauer, without whom that rally would not have happened. My work for Harold was and remains, as it has for so many gathered here and with us in spirit this evening, the highlight of my life and work in Chicago, apart from my life with my family and friends. Harold showed us, and so importantly for us younger feminists, Addie, Willie, and Nancy showed us how to be somebody that works for the common good, works for those in need of a hand up, and how to be a part of a movement to bend the arc toward justice. As the daughter of an immigrant who came to the United States in the week of the Pearl Harbor attack, and of another man of Harold's generation, David Seib, who also became a lawyer and fighter for social justice, I am honored to stand here with you at this time of such great opportunity for our nation to celebrate Harold and the path he created for the rest of us, including for other lawyers and feminists, notably our newest U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson. It's been a very good month. Please join me in a moment of silence to remember Chicago's warriors for the ages, including Addie Wyatt, Willie Barrow, Nancy Jefferson, and Harold Washington, and always for me, my two heroines, since I first came to Chicago from New York, Ida B. Wells and Jane Addams. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm fine. Okay. Thank you, Rebecca, and to everybody here tonight, this evening. God bless all of you. And to Josie, who has worked very hard, my love and thanks go out to you. Now, I will not go into my over 2-minute speech, which we were told to make, because the people have already done the history and they've done everything else. But I have to say, in terms of remembering Harold, he was one of the most trusted persons, a person with integrity, which is lacking today in many of the politicians as well as in individuals, period. Harold was a person who, when he made a promise, he kept that promise. And as Rebecca just talked about Nancy, she talked about Willie, she talked about Addie and Hortensia. If it were not for those 4 women, we got the Harold Washington Network for Women started. Now, I get sick and tired of when people talk about the coalition. The coalition, in a way, was very small. But the largest of the coalition happened to have been the Women's Network for Harold. And as people who work with me know, I get sick and tired of how the women are always left out. And the women, to me, don't have the responsibility of sticking up for themselves, because if it were not for the women, the men would not have. So we must give thanks to Harold, who made it possible for women who have never been in city government to rise to the position of department heads. Never in the history had that taken place. And it was because when Harold ran, Harold said that when I run, I will create a women's commission, which he did. It was the historical first commission on women in the history of Chicago. And we got in there and we did some fantastic things. All Harold told me, and he told the members of the cabinet, when Peggy comes in to talk with you about changes, make them. And that's what we did. Now, that's the end of my speech in terms of what Harold did in the history. And now I must go on to something that is extremely important. Now we sit here and we congratulate Harold and we talk about his legacy. But remember, his legacy is not completed. Harold dedicated a fantastic piece of land called DuSable Park. He dedicated this land over 37 years ago. And we have had the building of the Millennium Park, all these other 24 other parks, but the poor little beautiful Harold Washington Park has never been completed. Now, and somebody said, what? Yes, to all of you. I want to give you the facts in terms of why it is important for us to complete his legacy. He has a legacy for the people of the city of Chicago, and that is DuSable Park. The park needs to be completed as soon as possible within the next 2 years of Mayor Lori Lightfoot's next term. How about that, Lori? And this is in regardless of the development of the 400 North Lakeshore Drive by Related Midwest. $5 million in additional funds are necessary for the completion of this world-class park, and its connection to the flyover should be given by the city to make this happen. The park's development shall not be completed if we don't get the money. All I want to say as I end to all of you, especially those of you who never heard of DuSable Park, it is Harold's legacy for the people of the city of Chicago. We need you to fight for this park to be the best that it can be. We need you to fight for the completion of the park. We need you to fight for the fulfillment of Harold's vision and legacy to complete DuSable Park. And that would be the responsibility of all of us. I've been working on it for over 37 years. Just think about it. You probably had children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and we still don't have a DuSable Park. So please, those who know me know that I'm a very candid person and I speak the truth. And like I said, this is something that Harold wanted, and we need to complete it. I also want to put in a little 2 cents for our Women's Commission that we had that did fantastic work. But to all of you this evening, the one thing that should be on your mind is the fact that we need to complete DuSable Park. God bless you.
Oh, so we're going to move the program right along. And right now, we'd like to introduce the Honorable Juliana Stratton, Lieutenant Governor of the state of Illinois. Come on now, give us some love, make some noise.
Thank you.
All right, all right.
Good evening, everyone. I am Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, and I use she, her pronouns. Thank you, Richard Steele, for that warm introduction. It's always so great to see you, and thank you for getting everybody to sit down. I'd also like to take this moment to thank Mayor Lori Lightfoot, First Lady Amy Eshelman and their teams, Chicago Public Library Commissioner Chris Brown and his staff, event co-chairs and sponsors, and the members of the Harold Washington Legacy Committee, including Josie Childs, Sasha Dalton, and Lois Dean Walker. I am filled with so much gratitude with how you have brought us together so that we may all take part in honoring the memory of Mayor Harold Washington. You see, remembrance is more than how we look back on the past. It is an acknowledgement that the footsteps taken before us forged the path that we walk today, that a legacy is everlasting because it lives and breathes in all of us. I was just a student at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign when Mayor Harold Washington taught me that lesson. I was young and unsure about what it really meant to get into politics, but just seeing the possibility of seeing Chicago elect its first black mayor and such an incredible, charismatic, and inclusive public servant, well, it drove me to act. Hold on.
Can you please give this incredible lady who represents the state of Illinois some respect, please? Please, thank you.
Thank you so much. I was just saying that when I was a student at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, Mayor Harold Washington taught me a lesson. I was unsure about what it really meant to get into politics, but just the possibility of seeing Chicago elect its first black mayor and such an incredible, charismatic, and inclusive public servant, well, it drove me to act. And so I went to work on his campaign, and tonight I proudly wear my original Mayor Harold Washington volunteer button alongside my old school Washington for Chicago button to reclaim the energy of that experience. Organizing freedom rides, where we took people by the busloads to the polls, I saw firsthand that there were so many people who wanted to cast their ballots but found it hard to exercise their right to vote because of systemic barriers. And I saw that they needed help and that I could do something about it, that all of us, in fact, can have a role in making change, whether big or small. Mayor Harold Washington opened my eyes to the possibility of my future, and he opened the doors across this city because he exemplified what it means to give everyone a voice at the table. And I truly believe that he inspired my own commitment to fighting for justice, equity, and opportunity for all. None of us can guarantee how much time we have on this earth, but we can use the time that we've been given to make an impact that lives on for generations. Mayor Harold Washington did just that, shaping the Chicago that we all love today. So what I ask of everyone here this evening is that when you reflect on the story of Mayor Harold Washington, know that you, every one of us, are writing the next chapter. We find the words for the future that we want to see when we discover the power within ourselves and within each other. Now, this evening's recipients of the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Lifetime Award each played a role in changing the narrative, and we honor them for that. And so now I would like to acknowledge the incredible individuals who helped embed Mayor Washington's legacy into the fabric of this city. And I respectfully ask that you hold your applause until all of the names have been read. Reverend Walter Slim Coleman, Congressman Danny Davis, Judge Timothy C. Evans, Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia, Edward Gardner, Congressman Luis Gutierrez, Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., George E. Johnson, Peggy Montez, Alderman David Orr, Jane Ramsey, Renault Robinson, Congressman Bobby Rush, Alderman Helen Schiller, and Rebecca Seib. Please give them a hand. And now, I also speak the names of our ancestors, the change makers no longer with us, whose work we honor as our posthumous awardees. Again, please hold your applause until I've spoken all of their names. Dr. Timuel Black, Lou and Georgia Palmer, the Honorable Mayor Eugene Sawyer, Dolores Woods, and Nancy Jefferson. May they all continue to rest in power. I commend tonight's awardees for everything that they have contributed to this city, from the critical role that each of you have played in bringing Mayor Harold Washington into office, to your efforts to promoting justice and equity this very day, and for paving the way for so many, including me. Thank you for showing us the power of collective action for the greater good. And with that, it is now my distinct honor to introduce a leader who stands on the shoulders of Mayor Harold Washington and carries on his legacy as the 56th mayor of the city of Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
All right, good evening, everyone. So before I get into my prepared remarks, I'm going to do two things. First, today is Chuy Garcia's birthday. We must sing for him. Our friend, our leader, Chuy Garcia, join me in singing Happy Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chuy. Happy birthday to you, and many more. Now, if you were someone who worked on Harold Washington campaign, please stand. And let's give them a round of applause. Next, if you were a member of his cabinet in either the first or second term, please stand. If you served on the city council, now we heard a lot about the Verdoli Act 21, but if there's anybody here that was part of the Herald 21, please stand. Thank you all. I look out on this audience and I see trailblazers of progressive Chicago, good government Chicago, and fighters against the crushing political machine that denied so many generations of the ability to reach their God-given potential. It's an honor to be here among you. Nearly 100 years ago, on April 15, 1922, the first black mayor of this great city was born. 61 years later, on April 29, 1983, he would give his first inaugural address. In it, he reflected on the grassroots efforts that made his campaign and eventual win possible. The hard work ahead of him to take concrete steps to forever dismantle the machine and make government work for people who had been underserved for generations. And he referenced towards the end the kind of mayor that he wanted to be remembered as. His last reflection sticks with me the most because of its simplicity. He said, and I quote, "I hope someday to be remembered by history as the mayor who cared about people and who was, above all else, fair." I think most of us know that Mayor Washington met and exceeded his aspiration. But what far too many people don't know is how hard he had to fight to keep that aspiration alive during his time as mayor. Mayor Washington faced significant challenges as he tried to carry out his equity-based and reform-focused agenda. But because of the struggles that he went through then, we are a better city today. History shows us why. Within mere hours after his first inauguration speech at Navy Pier, Mayor Washington found himself front and center in what became known as council wars, which wreaked havoc on most of his first term. The wars were incited by a group of 29, mostly white aldermen known as the Verdoliak 29, who voted down Mayor Washington's replacements of council committee chairs and appointments to the Park District, the CTA, the Board of Education, city colleges, and other key agencies. His appointments wouldn't be able to remove acting from their titles until more than 3 years later, when 7 wards were remapped to reflect the rapidly growing black and brown populations in Chicago. Make no mistake, the actions of the Verdoliak 29 were spurred pure and simple by racial animus, and as well as a desire to maintain the status quo that had served them but robbed the people of Chicago. But despite this fierce opposition, Mayor Washington, as he always did, stood tall, determined to do everything in his power to fulfill the promise that the people had entrusted in him, to do everything in his power to protect the city and every person who lives in it. And so he did. To overcome the obstruction in City Council, Mayor Washington made several executive orders to do what he knew was right for the people of the city. On August 6, 1983, he made city records accessible to the public, ushering in a new era of transparency for City Hall. On October 12, 1983, he created the Mayor's Advisory Commission on Latino Affairs to ensure the voices of Chicago's growing Latino communities were heard in city government. Similar commissions for women and Asian Americans were also created through executive orders in 1984. And on March 7, 1985, he gave all residents, regardless of nationality or citizenship status, fair and equal access to city services, benefits, and opportunities, making Chicago the first in the nation welcoming city. A month later, on April 3rd, he used the power of the city's procurement process to open up city contracts to minority and women-owned businesses to help address the long-standing social and economic impact of racial and gender discrimination. And on January 25, 1986, he established an ethics code for administration employees to put an end to the use of public office for public gain, a practice that was unfortunately more common than not before he became mayor. Now, ladies and gentlemen, through these executive orders and others, Mayor Washington made city government more transparent, more ethical, and importantly, more diverse than it had ever been in our city's history. He left a profound impact on people who had been told no, who had been excluded, and were turned away so much of their lives. People in this room, low-income and working families, women, people of color, immigrants, and refugees. And up until his last moments on earth, Mayor Washington remained hard at work to deepen his impact. History tells us that the morning of his death, on November 25th, 1987, Mayor Washington, joined by former Fourth Ward Alderman Tim Evans and the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, COCO, he was there in Bronzeville to break ground on a new set of affordable housing units. Alderman Evans, describing as being in good spirits that day, recalling the mayor even played a little prank by putting dirt on his shovel and into the alderman's when he wasn't looking. In his remarks that day, the mayor expressed immense satisfaction in being able to, quote, provide good, sound, affordable housing which will help stabilize Chicago's neighborhoods, something that had been a core goal of his from day one of his administration. And we know, unfortunately, the rest of the story of that day. So what are some of the lessons that we need to remember from Harold Washington's legacy? Harold Washington, by boldly challenging the status quo and courageously demanding equity and justice for communities that have been marginalized for so long, our great mayor truly put Chicago on a path toward being a great global city. By no means was that effort easy, and we must never forget what he went through for those first 4+ years. But he knew how necessary it was in order to create a better quality of life for the residents of this incredible city. Because of him, we now have several fully established mayor's advisory commissions, including the original one he created for women. Because of him, we now have a welcoming city ordinance, not merely an executive order, as well as numerous programs and initiatives dedicated to contracting for women and minority-owned businesses and opening up opportunities for them to grow and thrive in the city of Chicago. And because of him, city government has become so much more diverse and representative of the melting pot of cultures that call Chicago home. By the time council wars kicked off in 1983, only 3 women, 16 black folks, and 1 Latino sat in the city council chambers, and the latter was unfortunately a part of the Verdoliak 29. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to report to you today, all of those numbers have dramatically changed. With the appointment of Nicole Lee as the alderperson for the 11th Ward, City Council now has 16 women, 20 black folks, and 13 individuals of Latinx descent. And the Black Caucus is at the heart of every major city council decision, having helped to pass some of the most complicated budgets in the city's history in recent years, increasing the city's minimum wage to $15 an hour, making sure through the fair scheduling ordinance that women and low-income workers had the ability to understand what their work schedule would be and giving them a fairer shot. And countless efforts through the pandemic to help individuals and small businesses. Though there are still some who are trying to restore the status quo Mayor Washington fought so hard to destroy, his hard work has given my administration a stronger defense against those efforts, and I know that every single day. I am truly honored to be able to walk in the path that Mayor Washington blazed, to build on his efforts and use his work as the blueprint that guides us every single day. However, the work of Mayor Washington's administration, and by extension my own, is not done yet. While equity and inclusion remain my North Stars, there are some who are determined to roll back the clock. Recall the chaos that ensued when Mayor Washington died. The vision he had for a more equitable and inclusive Chicago devolved into what many felt disappeared in the blink of an eye. and his emphasis on empowering black and brown neighborhoods felt like it was buried along with him. 32 long years, many wandered in the wilderness. And I feel the tug of that history every single day. And if you believe, like I do, that we can never go back to a status quo where a clouded few profited at the expense of the many, if you believe, as I do, that in a great global city, no child should be hungry, no family should lack housing, and jobs should be bountiful in every neighborhood, then the only way forward is being together and making sure that every single day we are doing what we can to make Harold Washington's legacy alive, living, breathing, so that our children can touch it and feel it today, tomorrow, and in the future. After all, as Mayor Washington once said, quote, "We can only progress if we work together. We do not and we cannot work apart." There are many people I have to thank for keeping Mayor Washington's legacy alive long enough for future mayors like myself to build upon. I'll start with the folks in this room. Of course, first and foremost, to the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee, led by the iconic Josie Childs. The co-chairs of tonight's events, Governor Pritzker, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, and of course, our own living legend, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, Sr. I am so honored that so many people who worked in the vineyard to make Harold Washington's election as mayor possible in '83 and then again in '87. Thank you all for being here. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank all the other esteemed guests. There are too many for me to name, but I'm looking at you across this room. Representatives elected current and past, the people who toil in the vineyards to this day to make our city a better place. Thank all of you as well. I've also got to take a point of privilege and thank the Mayor's Office of Community Engagement, led by Tina Hone, who's in the back of the room, and the family hold back. Thank you, team. I've got to thank the DCASE team for putting everything together. They always make these events incredibly special. The AIS teams who make sure that we can actually be heard in this large venue, and of course our host, the Chicago Public Library here at the Harold Washington Library Center. Ladies and gentlemen, by continuing to work together, we will keep on that path that Harold Washington blazed, that path of making Chicago a better, stronger, more inclusive, more equitable place for everyone in every neighborhood. One that is safer, one that is fairer, and one that we can all be proud to call home. Thank you all. God bless you.
Okay. Right now, I'd like to introduce a gentleman that was a high school classmate of mine, Hearst High School back in the day. Please welcome the Chief Judge, Tim Evans of the Circuit Court.
Thank you very much, Rich, for a very kind and generous introduction. Mayor Lightfoot, you laid it out beautifully. Congratulations on bringing all of us together. I think she deserves a round of applause, don't you? Josie, it was tough to pull all this together, but you did it. And I think Harold would be very appreciative for what you did. Let me just say that Harold Washington led a movement that stood for open, accessible, and responsive government. In the process, he championed human rights, economic justice, and fairness for every segment of our society. During his tenure in the mayor's office, he was confronted by and overcome by many challenges. And some of those who stood up to the challenges have been recognized tonight. Yes, they included the Mayor Washington 21. And if there are any Mayor Washington 21 folks still here, please accept our great round of applause for all that you did. A couple of names that you may not know about joined me with Harold Washington on many nights about 2 o'clock in the morning, and that would come along with chicken and biscuits from Gladys's, and Harold greeted us at the door and he said, "Come on in, Tim," and Grim for Jackie Grimshaw, and there she is right there, and Slim Coleman, who is there as well. Would you mind giving them a great round of applause? Because of his great vision and courage, combined with his never-ending commitment to integrity and justice, the city of Chicago was placed on a path to a destiny filled with hope. So if he were to walk through that door over to my right, as we celebrate his 100th birthday, I have no idea what he would do, but I suspect that what he would do was sing a while. He'd dance a while with many of you. He certainly would grab a handful of cake if there was any cake left. And he'd probably seek out some of these books, maybe about a dozen, and he'd have them read and returned by the time they were due. It is wonderful to be celebrating his legacy here in this beautiful library that carries Harold Washington's name. Harold would have loved it. It would have been his pride and joy. I hope on this day we can remember Harold's compassion and sense of fairness, along with his curiosity and good humor, to help carry us through the challenging days ahead. Let me say this. You've heard about the 21 and the 29, and you need to know that that vote ultimately became 25-25. And the guy who made the 25th vote is Luis Gutierrez, Congressman Luis Gutierrez. Come on up, Luis, and tell them about it.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Two things. I stand on the shoulders of all of the black women and men that sacrificed their life in the 50s and the 60s so that we could pass in 1965 a Voting Rights Act. And I stand on the shoulders of Harold Washington, who went to Congress to improve the Voting Rights Act, so that when the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund went before the federal courts and said that they were discriminating against the Latino community, what did Harold say? He said, Mayor Washington, they're in court today saying there are insufficient justice and seats in the Chicago City Council for the Latino community. What do you think of that? You know what Harold said? Guilty. And you know what Latinos thought that day? We're not invisible anymore. Somebody sees us. Somebody appreciates us. Somebody loves us. But you know, Tim, most importantly, you know what they thought? Somebody's ready to give us power so that we can be a transformative agent in our own community. That's what Harold Washington meant to Latinos, to white progressives, to Chicago, to the black community. So I just wanted to come here to say, a lot of people said, oh, what do you think? I said, I came here to say thank you, Harold. Wow, for your guidance, for your good counsel, for coming and supporting somebody who was driving a cab, but you saw and see something special. Something maybe I didn't even see in myself, Tim. He saw it. But not only me, he saw it in many, many young people. and he left us here to continue his work and to continue his legacy. So I just want to say there's a reason when 8 weeks after your death, we had our second child, Jessica, and her middle name is Washington. It's on her birth certificate. I wish you would have been around to see her, but I want you to know when she got to 5th grade and she was in her social studies class, she was the proudest little girl in that 5th grade class when she got to tell people who she was named after. Thank you so much for allowing me to address you here this evening.
Okay, moving right along, we're going to hear from some people who knew the remarkable Harold Washington. First person on our list is Congressman Bobby Rush of the 2nd Congressional District.
In the same place at the same time, remembering and honoring the legacy, the life, the love of Harold Washington. We all must agree that Harold's first love was politics. He was the best politician and that, frankly, that our community has produced in such a long, long time. Harold transformed the mayor's office into the people's office. We owe so much to Harold Washington. Harold used to say that being a member of Congress was the best job in the world. I humbly agree with him. But he made the mayor of the city of Chicago the most important, the most life-changing, the most effective for people office in the nation. Urban politics marked its transformation, its change to the day that Harold Washington was elected mayor of the city of Chicago.
I am U.S. Representative Danny Davis of the 7th District of Illinois, and I had the great honor and great pleasure of being intimately involved in the activities leading up to the election of Harold Washington as the first African-American mayor of the city of Chicago. But Harold Washington was also the most effective, positive impact on Chicago that any mayor that I have read about in the history of this city. Harold was articulate, passionate, fair, honest, visionary, and captured the hearts and minds of the people. He was what people call charismatic. He could walk into a room and light up the whole room. But he also was a battler. He would battle to the end to try and make his point, get his points across. And so history has recorded and will continue to record Harold Washington as one of the greatest mayors that the city of Chicago have ever had. His birthday is approaching. He would have been 100. It certainly would have been great had he been able to live to become 100, but the impact of his life will go on and on.
dream. You won election. You aroused the common people. You won with strength. Every urban American deserves to have in his own city as Harold Washington. You won with strength and character. We will always love Harold. Harold will live as long as we remember him. We should never forget Harold Washington. We should never forget. We should never forget him. God bless you.
So you heard from some remarkable people, including Congressman Bobby Rush from the 2nd Congressional District, who's actually here. Congressman, stand up. There you go. Congressman Danny Davis of the 1st Congressional District, and Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was here and had to leave a little bit early. So we're going to kind of wrap this up with some other speakers. Well, tonight's guests have helped to paint a picture of the man, the movement, and the history. A big part of the legacy of the first black mayor of Chicago is the way he delivered on his promises. Always. And even in the face of opponents committed to seeing him fail. Our next speakers give witness to his political legacy and the promises he kept. Please welcome Jackie Grimshaw, Jackie Grimshaw, former Director of the Intergovernmental Affairs for the Washington Administration and currently the Vice President for Governmental Affairs for the Center for Neighborhood Technology, followed by Dick Simpson, Professor of Political Science, University of Illinois at Chicago, and Patricia Harris, Trustee of Roosevelt University, who will be followed by our friend, State Senator Matty Hunter, and filmmaker Raymond Lambert. Let's welcome them all. We go back.
Yeah, Richard and I have lots of things in common. So I only have 2 minutes, and I know it's getting late, so I'm not going to thank all of the wonderful people that I had the pleasure of working with to make sure that Harold Washington was elected mayor. But those who are in this room, you know who you are, and you know how much I love you. But my 2 minutes devoted to how did we do this? So I would say that, you know, things come in threes. So the way I would characterize the successful campaign we had were three different emphases. One, we didn't have any money, right? So we had to raise money. And so part of the success of the campaign was people in the community who had the idea of putting barrels around the south side and the west side where people would deposit Washingtons for Washington. And that's how we built up the campaign from the grassroots level, because if you put your money into a campaign, you're putting your vote into that campaign as well. The second part, I would say, is that starting back in the fall of 1982, at my kitchen table, there are a number of people who said, how are we going to do this impossible thing? And so from that beginning, we put together a real structured campaign. Now, this was before the days of computers, but I had a secret weapon. I had a human computer by the name of David Cantor, who took every single precinct in the city of Chicago on a great big spreadsheet, and he laid out how each of the precincts voted in prior elections, mayoral elections. And from that spreadsheet, we identified the precincts that we were going to target. So we had our base vote, the folks that we knew we could count on to vote for Harold. We had those precincts who we thought we could get votes from. And then we had the precincts that, well, we'll just put somebody in there on election day and make sure they don't steal it, right? But the third area of the campaign is what I call the sound and light. The sound and light campaign were those folks who didn't want to do organized precinct work, knocking on doors and making sure they could identify the people we needed to bring out on election day. These folks wanted to have sound trucks, they wanted to have posters, they wanted to have visibility so that folks knew that Harold Washington was the candidate for mayor. And it really did take all three of those aspects in the campaign. Those folks who were willing to put their Washington in the barrel for Washington, those folks who wanted to knock on doors, wanted to know who the voters were, and those folks who wanted to have the visibility campaign. Now, I told Harold the morning of Election Day, I said, Harold, we're going to win. And he says, how do you know that? I said, well, today is February 22nd, George Washington's birthday. We had just completed the Super Bowl, and the winner of the Super Bowl was a Washington team with the quarterback named Washington. And so I said, without a doubt, we're going to win today.
So we've remembered the past, but we have a legacy to fulfill. Harold Washington left us a legacy because he changed the balance of power between the races in Chicago. He came in, we were a segregated city, and now we're a multicultural, multiracial city of the world with great pride. Harold Washington shifted the city politics from just the downtown development and the downtown elites to a city of neighborhood power, a city where economic development can happen in the poorest neighborhoods of the city, in which we can remake ourselves time and again. Harold Washington, he ended the old machine. He didn't quite make it dead, dead, dead like he promised, but he got us close, 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 and it's now our job to finish. As you've heard over and over, Harold was the first black mayor in Chicago's history, but he was elected by a rainbow coalition, a coalition of all races, a coalition of all ages, a coalition of all Chicagoans. Harold Washington symbolized Chicago and what it could become. Thousands of us and others flocked to Harold's election campaigns because he was the right man with the right message at the right time. And when he announced his campaign in his first speech, announcing on the south side of Chicago that he was going to run for mayor of the city of Chicago, despite all the other candidates with all the other money and all the other power, he said this: the city that's supposed to work doesn't. He declared that day, Chicago is a city divided where citizens aren't treated equally, they're treated unequally and unfairly. He said, I see a Chicago instead that runs well, but in which the services are provided as a right, not as a political favor. I see a Chicago of educational excellence and equity, of treatment for everyone, in which the jobs and the contracts are dispensed fairly, and in which justice rolls down like water. I see a Chicago in which the neighborhoods are once again the center of our city, in which businesses boom, and in which provide neighborhood jobs in every part of the city, in which neighborhoods join together to govern their own neighbors and their own city. That was what Harold Washington saw. That is the vision we have to fulfill. This is Harold Washington's legacy if we can complete it. Before Harold, Chicago was governed by patronage. He signed the consent decree that outlawed patronage. Before Harold, we had no right to see city government documents, even though our taxes paid for them. As Lori Lightfoot said, Harold signed the Executive Freedom of Information Ordinance, and then in 1987 passed the first ethics ordinance in the history of Chicago, more than 100 years after the city was founded. Before Harold, again, as Mayor Lightfoot said, there was no affirmative action in jobs and contracts, but we have affirmative action in jobs and contracts today. Before Harold, the city's infrastructure was falling apart, and he passed the largest neighborhood bond ordinance in the history of Chicago and got us built back up as a real city again. Former members of the Harold Washington administration, so many of you who are here tonight, make this claim. They claim that the floor of city government has been permanently raised. They claim that while the old Chicago machine may not yet be quite dead, as Harold had promised, it has been crippled and it will be killed. His legacy lives on in this 100th birthday, but it is our job to carry the legacy forward.
Well, that wonderful video that we saw, done by an incredibly talented gentleman, if you will, please welcome Ray Lambert, who produced Punch 9, a video presentation. Come on, Ray.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'll be quick. It's truly an honor. My name is Raymond Lambert. I'm producer of Punch 9 for Harold Washington. Truly honored to be here. Producing partner Sonia Jackson is somewhere in this room. We started on this journey about 7 years ago, and with the help of many people who are in this room, the Honorable Mayor Lightfoot and Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor, many of you who were in the administration that were generous with your time to sit down and do interviews with us. There are photographers here who shared their archive of history of Harold with us. And we screened the movie very limited in New York and in California. And here we won the Chicago Audience Award for documentary film, so we're really excited about that. We really had hoped that we could show more, but we're out aggressively trying to find a home for it. And as you know these days, if it's not on Netflix, HBO, TikTok, or Instagram, it never happened. So we hope that by this time, at the end of the summer, we have some great talks, that by this time next year, the world would have seen this film and be reminded of what a great man Harold Washington was. And then last but not least, I want to thank the Chicago Community Trust. We just got a wonderful grant to develop a curriculum for school-age kids and young adults based on the life of Harold Washington. So thank you very much to everybody, and hopefully we'll see this film again soon, even here at the library. All right, thank you so much. And our next speaker is Ms. Patricia Harris. Is that correct? All right, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pat Harris, and I am a current board member of Roosevelt University and the former board chair of Roosevelt University. In fact, I was the first black board chair for the university, as well as the first woman. And I'm proud to say that as a graduate, I'm very proud to be a part of the Roosevelt community. It's an honor to be here this evening to celebrate the centennial birthday and the legacy of Mayor Harold L. Washington. So on behalf of the university president, Dr. Ali Malekzadeh, and the entire Roosevelt community, I wish to thank Mayor Lightfoot. I wish to thank First Lady Amy Esselman, and as well as the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee for including us in this evening's program. I also want to thank the honorary co-chairs, Governor J.B. Pritzker, Tony Preckwinkle, and Reverend Jesse L. Jackson. Harold Washington once said, and I quote, "Roosevelt has done its job superlatively well, and it has imparted goals of fairness, equality, and the highest standards of personal achievements." Roosevelt graduates are the inheritors of a great tradition and are charged with an even greater mission to continue to seek the goals of enlightenment and reform. To me, these words are a testament of the power of education. More so, the lifetime achievements of Harold Washington and the other notable alumni are living proof of his great tradition. I'm personally honored to be a fellow Roosevelt alumna of individuals like the great Harold Washington, Dempsey Travis, Timuel Black, Bobby Rush, Mike Quigley, Melissa Bean, and Carla Hayden, just to name a few. Harold Washington's legacy lives on within our community and inspired others to continue his great work. And I'd like to take a moment to recognize the many members of the Roosevelt alumni that are here tonight. Would you mind just standing, all of the Roosevelt alumni who are here? Thank you. It's wonderful to know that Harold Washington was surrounded by so many members of the Roosevelt family as friends and his colleagues. Roosevelt continues to uphold our values of academic excellence, access, as well as equity and inclusion in all that we do. We empower students to embrace their own identities, and we prepare students to use their knowledge and passion to make a difference in the lives of others. I'm beyond humbled by the powerful work of our students like Jasmine Marie Cruz, who received the Illinois Human Rights Commission's Millennial Activism Award for her work defending and promoting women's rights. And the current senior, Troy Gaston, who was recognized by the Chicago Tribune for taking part in nearly 70 protests between March and November of 2020. We hope that these and other students will be inspired by the greats who came before them. And that's why, as you've heard before, Roosevelt is proud to partner with the Legacy Committee to establish the Harold L. Washington Legacy Scholarship. And so each year, the award will recognize a Black junior or senior who displays the highest level of commitment to transformative justice and democratic values. Each awardee shall maintain a strong record of leadership, service, community engagement, and academic excellence. And to summarize, they represent the best of both Harold Washington and Roosevelt University. So I'm pleased to share that we have raised $25,000 to date towards our $100,000 goal. And I hope that each of you will strongly consider making a charitable gift to this important initiative. Additionally, information can be found on the program. Your gift will perpetuate his legacy for years to come. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Next up, we'd like to introduce from the 3rd District of Illinois, Illinois State Senator Mattie Hunter.
How you doing?
Not bad, how about you?
Okay, okay. Good evening, everybody. Around this time last year, Josie Childs called me and told me that this night was going to take place. And I was real honored that she called me, and she said, I want to make sure that since Harold was a state rep, a state senator, could you all keep the noise down, please? That since Harold was a state rep, a state senator, a mayor, and served in Congress, that he is deserving of some other sort of lasting, sustaining kind of recognition. And so you saw the program. I have a resolution in there. And I looked at the resolution, and also on Harold's birthday, April 15th, is Harold Washington Day in Illinois. But, thank you. But I felt that that wasn't enough. I wanted something that school children can come and take a look at it and say, that was the first black mayor of the city of Chicago. And so I am pleased to announce that we are going to have a full body statue of Harold Washington positioned somewhere, it could be indoors or outdoors, of the state capitol. And I've already set aside the money to pay for it, so nobody can say, how you going to pay for it? $400,000.
$400,000, y'all get at a standing ovation. $400,000.
Right now we're going to have, right now we're going to have a very special presentation. Check this out.
Following in the footsteps of Mayor Harold Washington, the men of the Harold Washington Legacy Committee really appreciates the work of the women. And we especially appreciate the work of Josie Childs. And we have a special award for a woman who put this whole program together. That's Miss Lois Steen Woods Walker. Lois Steen, come to the stage. Stand, give her a standing ovation. All the men of the Harold Washington Legacy Committee come with us.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
It says, the membership of the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee celebrates the 40 years of service of Lois Steen Woods Walker as a Harold Washington mayoral campaign worker, service in his administration, her dedication to the Mayor Harold Washington Legacy Committee, and her determination to see the success of this night's program. Thank you. We love it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
And congratulations. Tremendous job. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Nothing back here.
Well, we're about to come to a close here. By the way, let me just tell you about Harold Washington internationally. Years ago, a friend of mine was in Ghana and saw Harold Washington's poster in a store. That's how worldwide famous he was. In the words of a hit song by the Dells of Chicago, "Oh, what a night this has been," honoring the one and only Mayor Harold Washington. We hope you remember his brilliance, keep his work alive, and that you're inspired to build the kind of Chicago that would make him proud. Thanks to Mayor Lightfoot, the First Lady, and our co-chairs, and a special thank you to the team who worked tirelessly to create Here's Harold. These are some of the folks I'm talking about who worked so hard to make this happen. Of course, Lowenstein Walker, who was in charge of this and made it happen and just got a wonderful award. Sasha Dalton. Commissioner Brown of the Harold Washington Library, and Sylvia Ewing. And thank you all so much for that. Right now, we're going to have the closing prayer. We'd like to bring to our podium Reverend Walter Coleman.
Can we just stand for a final word?
Let me make a correction to that. Slim Coleman. Y'all better know him as Slim Coleman.
Lord, we're so grateful that Harold was in our lives. We're so grateful that when they put him in jail, that your spirit came on him and he put his head down and said, right then, I'm going to be mayor of the city of Chicago. We're so grateful that he had the patience to listen to our foolishness, hour after hour, that no matter what we brought to him, that he opened his heart and his ears to hear us and to counsel us with his wisdom.
Did you know?
That he had the courage to not only fight in the city council, but to go and be a warrior in the neighborhoods, in neighborhoods where people wanted to kill him. But he came with magnanimous spirit of generosity and love and wisdom and won them over. Lord, we are so grateful that we knew him, that he was our friend. I know that those of us who were young with him, who he gave of his time, that we're better fathers for our own children, but for the way that he taught us and counseled us and loved us. Let's leave this evening knowing that he's in our hearts and will remain in our hearts. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Reverend Walter Coleman, better known as Slim Coleman, back in the days, involved heavily in Chicago politics and a great mover and shaker. Right now, we're going to close with the Arthur Sutton and the gifts of praise so we can have some spirituality and some music as we leave here tonight. Thank you all so much for participating. And by the way, if Harold were still alive, he'd want to be mayor at 100.